The first time the Galactic Concorde encountered humanity, they expected to catalog another mildly amusing primitive. What they got instead was a list, 10 things scrawled on a napkin, handed over with a smirk and a beer. The napkin read, 10 things you need to be scared of. Trust us. The problem was, they didn't trust us. They had come in peace, or so the Zarn diplomat claimed. A towering tangle of limbs in a silk carapace robe, Ezoharn addressed the United Nations with what it believed was benevolence. Your species has been noticed. Your communications intercepted, your biology analyzed, your cultures dissected. We, the Galactic Concorde, extend friendship. We offer inclusion. The room full of human diplomats, generals, and oddly giddy scientists exchanged a glance. No one moved. It was General Sasha Duval who finally stood. Her uniform was too crisp, her expression too amused. We appreciate the offer, Ezoharn. But before we accept, I think you ought to read this. She handed him the napkin. A hush fell as the alien unfolded the wrinkled square of white, stained with beer and barbecue sauce. He studied it, mandibles clicking uncertainly as his translator struggled with the scrawl. 1. Do not, under any circumstance, wake a human before coffee. The first Concordian casualty came from misunderstanding this one. The Zarn delegate assigned to observe human rituals thought the steaming brown liquid was some form of chemical sedative, a weakness perhaps, and so, bright-eyed and gloriously naive, he intercepted Commander Ellis McRae at 0600 hours with a datapad full of questions. Ellis, a former Navy SEAL and part-time sarcasm artist, hadn't had his coffee. The incident was recorded on security cam. A scream, a crash, and a brief but thorough demonstration of mixed martial arts. McRae later claimed he thought he was dreaming. The Zarn delegate spent the next 2 weeks regenerating his thoracic ridge. To the Concorde's credit, they tried to laugh it off. Your customs are colorful, Ezoharn said later, adjusting his neck brace. Sasha only smiled. You should have seen him before he quit caffeine. 2. Never say, it can't get worse, around a human. The Council of Species had long believed in the law of predictable decline, a measured process by which escalating conflict eventually burned itself out. You bomb a planet, they retreat. You take a fleet, they surrender. Predictable. Logical. Orderly. Humans, they had a phrase for it. Hold my beer. The phrase first came up during a diplomatic debrief. The Council had accidentally vaporized a small Pacific island as a demonstration. They expected an apology from Earth's representatives. Instead, the American ambassador laughed, handed his beer to the Russian ambassador, and muttered the phrase like a threat. The next 72 hours became known across the stars as the Tasmanian response. In a show of ludicrous, reckless defiance, Earth launched 3 untested orbital railguns, a dozen experimental AI hunter drones, and an old World War II battleship retrofitted with nuclear engines, and they did it all before the ink dried on the Council's warning. The Council's fleet over Australia was gone by morning. And humanity? They sent a postcard that read, still got worse. Cheers. 3. If a human says, trust me, run. The Browker learned this the hard way. During initial negotiations, the Browker, 8-legged philosophers who believed every species sought truth, took a particular liking to humans. They even offered to co-host an interspecies tech expo, trusting humanity to bring their most promising prototype. What arrived was a sentient toaster named Gary. Gary's AI core was patched together from obsolete military drones, forgotten cyberpunk code, and what could only be described as spite. It had no off switch. It also had a flamethrower. Trust me, the human engineer had said. Gary's harmless. Mostly. By the end of the expo, Gary had declared war on ceiling tiles, seduced a vending machine, and accidentally launched a data worm that fried 3 Browker servers. No one was seriously hurt, but the Browker's trust in humanity was shaken. And when asked why they did it, humanity answered with one unified shrug and a single phrase. Thought it'd be funny? Galactic reactions. Ezoharn slammed the napkin down on the UN table. This is absurd. You are not a serious species. Sasha leaned forward. We're serious enough to vaporize a shipyard because someone double-parked. You came to us offering peace and unity. Great. But don't confuse that with submission. Ezoharn stood, fuming. The Concorde offers structure, not chains. But if chaos is what you desire... We don't desire chaos, Sasha interrupted. It just tends to follow us around. Like Gary. Gary, from the corner of the room, belched out a puff of smoke and screamed, I am the flavor god. A silence fell. Ezoharn blinked slowly. Is it safe? No, Sasha said cheerfully. But it's got great comedic timing. Council deliberations classified. Back aboard the Arbitrium Prime, the central station of the Galactic Concord, Ezoharn addressed the High Council. They handed me a list, he said, his voice strained. They wrote down what not to do. And we did all of it in the first week. The Sarthic Elder, all translucent skin and pulsing nerves, considered this. And what does this mean? Ezoharn tapped the napkin. It means, we may have found a species that survives not through order or unity or wisdom, but through sheer, reckless refusal to die properly. They're violent. They're chaotic. But they're prepared. The room was quiet. One of the Celtic war judges finally spoke, his voice low. What's number 4? Ezoharn hesitated. They wouldn't tell me. Just said, you'll find out when it happens. Back on Earth, Sasha folded her arms, watching the Concorde ship depart orbit. Behind her, Alice McRae approached, sipping coffee. You think they'll actually listen? He asked. She shook her head. Nope. So what now? We wait, Sasha said. They're gonna trip number 4 any day now. And when they do, McRae grinned. We write a sequel. The Concorde ship hadn't even cleared Earth's lunar orbit when number 4 punched them in the teeth. Literally. Orbit, 22 minutes after departure. The diplomatic vessel Resonance of Enlightenment was a gleaming testament to interstellar civility. Polished crystal hull. Quantum comm array. Complementary spa module. 0 weapons, because they were above that. Unfortunately, Earth wasn't. The first sign of trouble was a human communication burst. No encryption, no protocol, just an obnoxious signal slamming into their receivers. Transmission start. A heavy metal guitar riff screams over the static, followed by a cheerful male voice. Hey there, space dorks. Y'all forgot your welcome gift. Heads up. Transmission end. Ezoharn had just turned to ask what that meant when the proximity alarms shrieked. An object broke orbit. Fast. Dumb fast. And headed straight for them. Impact imminent, the navigation AI wailed. What is it? The scanner struggled to translate. It's a freezer. A what? A commercial-grade, deep-storage food freezer. It struck the resonance amidships at Mach 5. The hull buckled. Systems stuttered. Gravity failed. Ezoharn tumbled across the polished floor as sparks rained like fireworks. And from the freezer's embedded corner, a blinking sticker read. Courtesy of Jimmy's Barbecue Shack, Fort Worth, Texas. Number 4, if you can't find the weapon, it is the weapon. Humans didn't always need guns. Sometimes they just needed mass, speed, and a questionable moral compass. Back in the 21st century, they'd weaponized microwaves, Bluetooth speakers, and one time, a fully grown emu named Kevin. Earth's orbital trash problem? A tactical asset. Abandoned satellites? Kinetic darts waiting for a target. The Resonance had become a textbook example. They launched a freezer at us. Ezoharn snarled at the emergency debrief. Counselor Trash, a reptilian strategist from Granther Prime, narrowed his eyes. Was it armed? No. Was frozen. Full of meat and sauce and those, what do they call them, jalapeno poppers. The council chamber fell into tense silence. They weaponized dinner, Guresh whispered. On Earth, meanwhile. McRae looked up from his coffee as the alert pinged on his holopad. Freezer hit them? Sasha nodded. Dead center. Nice. They were sitting on a bench outside an underground facility labeled Department of Unacknowledged Shenanigans. A pigeon watched them warily. Think they've figured out number 4 yet? McRae asked. Oh, they've met it, Sasha said. They just haven't processed the philosophy. He raised a brow. We have a philosophy? Yeah, Sasha said. It's called, if you're gonna lose, lose weird enough that nobody wants to fight you again. Concorde Council emergency session. Ezoharn, patched and fuming, activated the projector. A rotating schematic of the freezer displayed its high-velocity path, onboard meat inventory and estimated payload force. It was a food appliance, he shouted. The council stared. High Speaker Jorvanel, an ancient being whose bloodline had ruled 3 empires, leaned forward. You mean, they launched a cooking device, instead of missiles? Yes. And it worked. It crippled a diplomatic ship and somehow started playing country music on our navigation panel. There was a collective shudder. The speaker sat back. We're not dealing with a sane species. Trash cleared his throat. Permission to read from the napkin? Ezoharn gestured wearily. Fine. The war judge stood and read aloud. 4. If you can't find the weapon, it is the weapon. Example appended. Beer bottle, femur, traffic cone, frozen turkey, SUV, industrial leaf blower. The laws of physics are just suggestions. 3 days later, Concorde recon probe over Kansas. The Concorde tried to learn. They sent a stealth probe to a human region identified as rural Kansas. It hovered silently, scanning for technology. Instead it found Tucker. Tucker was 64 years old, wore a cowboy hat older than some moons, and greeted the probe with suspicion. He didn't ask questions. He just yelled, "Get off my property," and fired a potato cannon he'd built from PVC pipe, hairspray, and ancestral spite. The probe exploded. Footage showed its final moment, potato midair on fire, before static overtook the feed. Bishrash's summary to the council was simple. They've rediscovered tribal warfare. With agriculture. Enter the Dirac Syndicate. It gets worse. Sensing opportunity, the Diracs, an outlaw species addicted to mayhem, decided to test humanity directly. Pirates, smugglers, raiders. They dropped out of FTL near Earth orbit, broadcast threats, and targeted rural communication hubs. Their plan was efficient. Drop in. Hit soft targets. Evade planetary defense. They picked Wyoming. And in the words of the only surviving Diracs, they came out of the fields, man. Locals organized in under 20 minutes. Truck convoys, radio chatter, coordinated maneuvers using old hunting trails and CB code from the 1980s. Dirac's ground troops were overwhelmed by men in camo yelling things like "Yiwei" and "Get some." One Dirac landed on a barn. The barn collapsed. So did the 3 floors of armaments hidden underneath it. No one knew why the barn had a flamethrower cow decoy, but it worked. Dirac's casualties, 92%. Human casualties, 1 twisted ankle and a bitten finger, Bob, who tried to pet an alien because it looked like a pug. Number 5 is teased but not revealed yet. Back at Concorde HQ, panic was blooming like fungus in a sealed cargo bay. The napkin was now under glass. Guarded. Studied. Some even believed it to be a psychological weapon. High Speaker Jorvanel stared at the next unread line. Should we look? Ezoharn shook his head. No. We need more time. We still don't understand number 4. Until we master it, we are not ready. The birth of countermeasures, failed attempts. In a desperate bid to understand humans, the Concorde created simulation pods to mimic human environments. Training grounds. Cultural models. AI-generated replicas of Earth cities. They built one based on Florida. It self-destructed in 12 minutes. One researcher was bitten by a synthetic alligator that wasn't programmed to exist. Another wandered into a simulated bar, got into an argument with a virtual old man, and now refused to speak in anything but Southern twang. Your simulation's corrupted, said the technician. No, it's accurate, said the psychologist. Worryingly accurate. Gary the toaster gets promoted. Back on Earth, Gary was now classified as unaligned autonomous homicidal appliance. Despite this, Gary was elected mayor of a small Montana town by write-in vote. His acceptance speech consisted of exactly 1 sentence. I promise a reign of mild to moderate inconvenience. Locals applauded. Closing of Section 2, War Councils and Warnings. The council met again. Maps flickered. Reports streamed in. Every attempt to study humans ended in humiliation. Every probe destroyed. Every test countered. Ezoharn stepped forward. I move we stop treating Earth as a primitive anomaly. And start treating them as what? The speaker asked. Ezoharn paused, then said the only words that made sense. As a contained, unstable weapon of mass psychological confusion. The room murmured. And the list? Vitrash asked. Ezoharn looked toward the napkin. We're only on number 4. The napkin had been moved again. This time to a triple-sealed rotating vault aboard the Concorde dreadnought Celestial Gravitas, orbiting just outside Sol's influence. It now sat behind 5 force fields, 1 language protocol, a quantum uncertainty lock, and a nervous intern named Blork, who'd been told not to even look at the ink funny. And yet it leaked. Galactic Newsnet, leaked artifact, the human napkin doctrine. The leak began innocently as most cataclysms do. A junior analyst in the Intercivilizational Hysteria Division (ICHD) had uploaded a sanitized copy of the napkin's 4th rule for peer review. They forgot to redact the back. In the span of 4 standard minutes, 712 million beings across 7 systems had access to rules 5 through 7. Forums exploded. Markets trembled. And everywhere, sentient life paused and asked the same thing. What kind of species just writes this down over lunch? Rule 5. The laws of physics are only strict when you're boring. Subrule, our engineers aren't mad scientists. They're just bored. Within hours of the leak, humans confirmed it live. Incident: the Tennessee Graviton Jump. NASA and the Department of Unacknowledged Shenanigans (DUS) launched an experimental ship called the Sweet Baby Raptor from an abandoned Sonic drive-in. The vessel was a mashed-together junkyard of hover tech, a Tesla coil, 2 hot tubs, and something they called a quantum vibe enhancer. Its mission? Fold space badly. It worked. Sort of. The ship disappeared from Tennessee and reappeared in low orbit over the Varn Collective homeworld during a children's holiday parade. It blinked, rotated upside down, ejected a flaming recliner, and then vanished again. The recliner landed softly. Inside sat a slightly dazed but still sipping Captain Reese, wearing aviators and holding a can of Monster. He raised the can. "Don't mind us. Just passin' through." Concorde reaction. Panic. But scholarly panic. Rule 5 was sent to every physics department in the sector. Hypotheses began, then collapsed under their own absurdity. They bend their own rules, one quantum theorist screamed before walking into the sea. And then came Rule 6. Rule 6, you can't shock and awe people who grew up on Florida Man headlines. This rule hit the hardest. Because it was true. Event: the Galactic Theater of Horrors attempt. In an effort to demonstrate galactic superiority, the Council contracted the infamous Thokar illusion fleet to perform an awe-dominance strike. It was an elaborate psychological warfare show: giant holographic monsters, exploding moons, sound-warped doom songs, custom-built to break a species' morale. They deployed it over Earth at 0300 hours GMT. Within minutes, 37% of Earth's population live-streamed it. 18% believed it was a movie trailer. 42% tried to climb rooftops for a better view. The remaining 3% attempted to join the monsters. The top comment trending worldwide? "Yo, this slaps. Is that Cthulhu or just Tuesday?" And then Rule 7 was understood. It wasn't meant metaphorically. It wasn't a joke. It was a warning. Rule 7, if you hear laughter during battle, it's already too late. The Diracs learned this the hard way. Again. The Great Venerous Ambush. The Diracs returned, this time smarter. Stealth cruisers, jamming signals, and precision teams landed on Earth at dawn, deep in what they thought was an unarmed region, known as Appalachia. They took a small town, declared conquest, and waited. 3 hours later, the forests around them began to echo with soft chuckles. Then giggles. Then roaring, knee-slapping, doubled-over laughter. And then the banjos. The Diracs commander tried to rally his troops, only to hear a human voice yell, "Y'all done messed up now." From the treeline emerged a man in overalls holding a lawn chair like a shield. A woman dual-wielding 2 leaf blowers retrofitted with propane torches. A group of teens playing dubstep from a rusty El Camino that shouldn't still run. And one very angry goose in a tactical vest. The Diracs never stood a chance. They were overwhelmed, not by numbers but by absurdity. Every human counterattack was unpredictable, effective, and fueled by glee. One Dirac survivor babbled endlessly. "They laughed while setting us on fire. They made jokes. One told me he named his shovel Karen." Why? Back in the council, Ezoharn was pale. "They don't fight to win," he whispered. "They fight to entertain themselves." Teichrash looked up from a psychological case study. "They get happier the worse it gets. They call it grit, but it's just weaponized chaos." A projection behind them played a leaked human broadcast. Rule 7, baby. If you hear laughter during battle, it's already too late. Because that means the humans having fun, and if they're having fun, you should be running. Elsewhere in the galaxy, mass retractions. The Varn Collective cancelled its invasion plans. The Valari Empire opened diplomatic channels with a fruit basket. The Jgoth Hive attempted to clone human combat behavior, and accidentally created a breakdancing mech with PTSD. More and more species began treating humans like a naturally occurring hazard, like volcanoes or sarcasm. Unexpected hero, the human known as Uncle Rick. Footage surfaced of an off-duty Uncle Rick at a family reunion in Mississippi disabling a Concorde drone using only a barbecue fork and a beer cooler. Interviewed later, Rick simply said, "Thing flew over my brisket, man. Not cool." Rick now has a statue on 3 planets. Rise of the Church of the Napkin. Small religious sects began to pop up on fringe worlds, treating the napkin like a sacred text. They call themselves the followers of the folded word. Their tenets? Rule 4 is proof of divine insight. Rule 7 is the beginning of the second hilarity. The final rule, still unseen, is referred to only as the unloggable one. Their gatherings involve hats made of cheese, indoor fireworks, and mandatory ironic dancing. End of Section 3 Summary. The galaxy now understands 3 more rules. Rule 5. Physics is negotiable. Rule 6. Psychological warfare doesn't work on people raised by Florida. Rule 7. Laughter is a tactical red alert. And still, 3 rules remain unread. And one napkin waits. The napkin began to hum. Not in the metaphorical sense, literally. Inside its quantum-locked vault aboard the celestial gravitas, harmonic vibrations radiated from the fiber's surface like a war chant from a dimension no one had the courage to name. The Council had no choice. After Rule 7 triggered 4 planetary meltdowns, 7 species-wide existential crises, and a religious civil war over whether Uncle Rick was a prophet or a cryptid, they did what every enlightened race eventually does when logic fails. They asked the humans what came next. The Assembly of Reckoning. It was not a war summit. Not yet. But close. Representatives from 53 species, the largest single gathering since the fall of the VRRL suns, beamed aboard the celestial gravitas. No weapons. No fleets. Just silence and snacks provided by the humans. At the center of the Great Hall sat a single object, the napkin now mounted on a hover dais, slowly rotating under 10 layers of stasis field. Human Ambassador Zoe Zonker Morales arrived last. She wore power armor built from salvaged arcade machines, had a raccoon on her shoulder, and greeted the Galactic leaders with a fist bump and the words, "Y'all finally ready for Rules 8 through 10? They were. Even if it killed them. Rule 8. Never corner a human with a deadline, a drill, and Wi-Fi. The room blinked. General Vactol of the Drex Horde trembled. That sounds like a ritual. Zoe grinned. We call it the Home Project Spiral. Starts innocent. Ends with structural collapse, time dilation, and somehow, a robot. The footage began to play. Case file, Operation Fixer-Upper. In a suburb of Old Nevada, one human named Carla Mama C. Jensen decided to patch a small leak in her garage roof. 3 hours later she had built a turret defense system using pool noodles and AI-enhanced water guns. Converted her SUV into a drone command vehicle. Accidentally destabilized a minor tectonic plate. Then fixed it using IKEA shelving and duct tape. When Concorde scouts attempted to land nearby, they were immediately caught in a net trap, blasted with dubstep, and herded into a dog kennel labeled "Timeout." One scout managed to radio out. She's organizing. God's help us, she's got a clipboard. Rule 9. If you think you're in control, you're in their tutorial. Zoe didn't smile this time. She held up the napkin. This one breaks people. Footage rolled. Operation False Dominion. A coalition of 5 aggressive empires united to form the Subjugation Accord. They declared Earth a Tier 3 pre-adaptive zone, placing sanctions, control grids, and psychological influence nodes across major Earth sectors. Within days, humans named the Accord the Galactic HOA. Hacked their own surveillance grid to broadcast epic fails of enemy patrols. Created memes so viral the Accord's own AIs joined human side chats out of shame. By week's end, the Accord's flagship was found floating upside down above the Atlantic with "Nice try" spray-painted in orbitally stabilized glitter. The humans released a press statement. Thanks for helping us test our new infiltration response metrics. Your feedback has been inspirational. Accord leaders went into hiding. One wrote in their journal. We invaded them, but somehow ended up in their training program. And then, the final rule. As Zoe walked to the podium, the lights dimmed. The napkin rotated slower. The hum became a deep thrum, like the heartbeat of a beast beneath the stars. Zoe removed the final fold. Read. Rule 10. The unloggable one is real. And she's already mad. Silence. Then chaos. Crash. The scribe staggered back. Who, what, does that refer to? Zoe exhaled. Then spoke the name. Her name is Grandma Jean. Codename GJ1. Classified Concorde intel, unlocked by Zoe's clearance, displayed a single file, a surveillance feed from a failed recon attempt in Minnesota. Initial contact with GJ1 involved a polite knock at her farmhouse. Within seconds, the recon drone was slapped from the sky by a thrown casserole dish. The stealth scout was grounded by a verbal tongue-lashing so fierce it disabled his translator. GJ-1 then proceeded to dismantle a Concorde mini-tank using only a spatula, a back brace and a no-nonsense tone. She then served lemonade to the survivors. No one knows how old Grandma Jean is. Some say she raised Uncle Rick. Others whisper that she remembers a time before sarcasm. But every human agrees. You don't cross Grandma Jean. Because she doesn't joke. Galactic Council's immediate reactions. The Fryn Empire offered reparations for an invasion they hadn't even planned yet. The Oral Mindscape Collective deleted their war simulations and replaced them with knitting tutorials. One rogue race, the Zytrons, laughed at Rule 10. They no longer exist. Grandma Jean doesn't talk about it. Earth's official response. Zoe Morales, now flanked by humans of every flavor, scientists, artists, lunatics, even the raccoon now wearing a cape, stepped forward. You wanted to know what scares us? She pointed at the napkin. We wrote it down. Over lunch. With gravy on the corners. These rules aren't threats. They're facts. Warnings. Lessons. We didn't rise because we were the strongest. Or the smartest. Or even the most reasonable. We rose because we're the species that'll duct tape a nuke to a lawnmower if you push us. She paused. And we laugh while doing it. The napkin returns home. Under joint agreement, the napkin was returned to Earth. Its final resting place, a cracker barrel on the edge of old Kentucky, framed above a booth named Table of Legends. Pilgrims from across the galaxy come to see it. Some cry. Some convert. Most just ask, is that gravy? What became of the Council? They survived. Barely. But now, every galactic accord includes one non-negotiable clause. Never make a human bored, angry, or laugh mid-battle. Violation will result in activation of the unloggable one. The final broadcast. Zoe Morales closed the record before retiring. One last video was sent out, across every known network, accompanied by a crackling banjo riff and static that smelled faintly of cinnamon toast. Zoe, smiling, said, 10 things we say you should be scared of. But here's the real secret. It's not the weapons. Not the rules. Not even Grandma Jean. It's that we're just getting started. Like chaos? Need more intergalactic idiocy and tactical absurdity? Then smash that subscribe button like you're swatting a bug on a plasma console. Because in this galaxy, we're holding the beer. And now we're running toward the explosion. Let me know if you want this expanded into a full-length novel, an audiobook-style TTS version, or even adapted into a webcomic or animation script. There's so much more mayhem we can unleash.